Hello, people. Today I want to discuss the verses in Matthew, uh, from Matthew 8:14 through 17, and under the heading, Jesus Healing Many. Now, I've tried to work this out many ways, how to start this video, and I had it all scripted out on the screen and how to talk about it. But the more I try to do it scripted, the more it came across as if I were reading something. And I think what's important here is not me giving you my written version of the script, but just speaking from my heart. I can do that so much easier. So I just want to go ahead and jump into Matthew 8 and 14. And I separate it into two verses. I separate it into Matthew 8 14 and 15, and then 16 and 17, because to me there were two things going on. First, Jesus um, touched Matthew's mother, I'm sorry, it's touched Peter's mother in law and healed her, and she got up and she began to serve him. And secondly, it seems like there was a time that passed, and Jesus um, remove demonic sources or demonic evils from other people and a host of other people. It said that Jesus removed demonic possessed people, many of them. And I apologize for the background. I hope this comes out clearly, but I found that being near the beach was the best place to do this assignment, but being outside, I couldn't see very well, and I did not want to be squinting my eyes while I was talking. So forgive me for that. Getting back to what I was saying, how I separated uh, the verses. Um, in Matthew 8:14 through 15, it said that Jesus walked into the house, and just a touch of Peter's mother-in-law, and she was healed, and she got up and she began to serve him. Now, I know for myself, after, doing much research, that Peter's mother-in-law was a Jewish lady that at this point in her life was probably a widow, and because of the Jewish tradition, she was just someone that was taken care of by the family of whom she belonged to. So maybe the wife, and not that I want to get into much speculation about that before doing the research. But what's interesting that Jesus walked into the house and he touched a Jewish woman. And we know when we read anything about Matthew and his time and day, Jewish women were like caste members of society, and they only served one purpose, and that was to serve their masters, their husbands, and their children. So for Jesus to come in and to heal a woman, for me, that meant that Jesus cares, not just for those that need him, but for those that are who feel marginalized. And I can recognize, I can sympathize with that today about people feeling marginalized. Being a African American woman, at times there have been instances of me feeling that way, feeling marginalized by society in general, but overcoming that and doing like Peter's mother-in-law did. She got up, she was healed by one touch, and she started serving Jesus. It didn't say she started feeding him and fixing a meal. It said she started serving Jesus, meaning for me that from that point on, she gave her life to God. She gave her life back to her faith, and that was to serve Jesus. Now, in this section of Matthew, Matthew lived in a time where there were there were Jews and there were Gentiles and there were the rulers of all of them not Jewish, and so there was kind of like an oppressive situation going on here, and Matthew, being one of those, was um, one of the highest of the oppressed, if you want to look at it like that. Matthew was a tax collector. He was called a publican by the Roman government, and a publican was a Jewish tax collector. So Matthew lived in his community as a person with prosperity that was not respected by the Roman government, but definitely they had a reliance on him as a person to collect taxes from his people. And his people, the Jews, were not very fond of Matthew because he was a tax collector. So to have a perspective from Matthew speaking as a publican to other people like him about Jesus and what he did to a woman, it's kind of significant. It shows that Matthew was pointing out that, hey, Peter invited Jesus into his house for a meal, and Jesus did something extraordinary. He touched Peter's mother-in-law, and she was sick, and he healed her. Can you imagine? No one else cared about Peter's mother-in-law. All the Romans and all the Jewish people around her did not make her well. It wasn't until Jesus came in and touched her that she got well and she served Jesus. That is significant. Um, the other part of this, Matthew 8, 16 and 17, I'm just going to take a moment and just make sure that I quote it correctly. I'm going to pull it up in my Bible app. I'm sorry I didn't have it prepared. I was prepared with my notes, but not prepared with the Bible app on this. So, just if you will indulge me just for a second, I will pull this up. But I will say at the time, um, Jesus served many. Jesus didn't come to serve just a few people. Jesus came to serve many. Jesus, Jesus's life, as it was foretold in the fulfillment verses of Matthew, um, Jesus' life was a fulfillment of prophecy, in that Jesus came to serve humanity, not be served by humanity. He came down to touch people in a way that they had not been touched by their own faith so far up until that point. And Jesus wanted, God wanted people to understand that Jesus was Him in the flesh, and that what they had prayed for and what they had gotten was their Messiah, their King of the Jews. It said that, getting back to Matthew 8, it says that when evening came, many who were demon possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. This was to fulfill what was prophesied in Isaiah. It says, he took up our infirmities and bore our diseases. And that would be from Isaiah 53:4. So there was a meal after after Peter's mother-in-law was healed, and he touched her. Um, that Jesus sat down and ate, and after he ate, there were many who came that were demon possessed. Now, when you think of demon possession, you could think of, oh, I don't know, very mean and very mean-spirited people. That's what I see when I think of demon possessed. I think of mean-spiritedness, and people being callous and not caring who they hurt. Uh, these people came to Jesus and they were healed, meaning that um, he drove out, not, well, you could say he drove out the devil. If you've ever been in the grips of addiction and uh, seen what that looks like, then you know that they were demon possessed. I compare them to I compare them today to zombies, and where we see on the movie screen where they call zombies, robotic like features that eat on flesh, and their only mission is to feed off another. Um, I would compare that to the demon possessed in Matthew, and that what he spoke of was having that removed, and I say it in this way, getting into recovery and getting back to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because Jesus was the one who came and saved the world. He came to heal people that had no hope of being healed. You know, I was one of those people. I had no hope of not being, caught up in my addictions and my bad habits. But then I met Jesus in my dark and deepest moments, and from that moment on, I began to walk forward. I imagine that's what these many who were demon possessed must have done too. After they were brought to him and he drove out the spirits, they moved on with their life, and they moved on in a way that represented the power that had been given to them through Jesus Christ and his touching them. And without there being a long, drawn out discussion, I think that's what we're talking about when we speak of Matthew 8:14 through 17, is the fact that Jesus came to bring his people, not his people, God's people, because we have to remember that Jesus is God, and God wanted to reconcile us back to him, because that's what he promised he would do. He promised that, he promised back in the beginning that the head of the devil would be crushed, and that it would be walked on by the feet, by the foot of his son. That was from Genesis, and it's not the correct quote, but it's a paraphrase quote, and it means that uh, Jesus came here to save us. Matthew exemplifies all those ways that Jesus was the fulfillment of prophecy, and that Jesus was the messianic king, the Messiah that the world had been looking for during that time, and that Jesus continues to fulfill prophecy today by by when we reach out to him. There is a touch, there is a power that we receive from the word that we read in the book about Jesus being the savior of our lives. I hope this makes sense, and that concludes this presentation for today on Matthew 8 through 14. Thank you.